Good morning. I'm very happy for you to take your seats now. We are starting the session, Paving the Way to Accelerate Private Finance Contributions to International Targets, the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility. And I am asking our host, João Sousa of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, for his opening remarks.
I can speak loud if needed be.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, first, thank you deeply to the government of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg for helping IECN to develop the Blue Natural Capital Facility. In order to achieve international targets, we need to speed up private finance, and that's what we've been doing so far with the support, as mentioned before, of the government.
Thank you, João. And now I'm very happy to pass over the microphone to one of the key thought leaders of the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility, Nathalie Roth from Luxembourg, from For Climate, who will take us through the facility and the context in which it was developed. Nathalie, over to you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you. Not so many here yet, but I guess we have the hardcore at least listening to what we have achieved over the past 5 years. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad to make the introduction to the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility. We developed the idea already at the Paris COP. We were aware of the potential of the blue carbon ecosystems, the mangrove seagrasses, and coastal wetlands, and we wanted to channel much more money into these valuable ecosystems, and were trying to discover ways how to do it best. So we were, of course, conscious that we have to combine the restoration conservation with some form of also business activities, new revenue streams for these ecosystems in order to channel funding, larger scale funding, more commercial funding into restoration conservation. So we discussed on how to do it. We immediately saw that we have to work on developing a pipeline. That's the key, because we have a lot of instruments out there, from funds to bonds that were the early start of the green bonds and blue bonds. But we needed a pipeline, a solid pipeline. So we set up the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility to provide technical assistance for projects to develop in a way that they can be picked up by more commercial investors. In order to create this risk-return profile, a more attractive risk-return profile to channel money. A key element of it was the impact section. So really focus on what are the main impacts, what are the environmental and social key performance indicators. And here is here's a little bit of story map where we started in 2018. The story map from the first phase until 2021. The concept was developed by IUCN, Moritz, Torsten, Dorothea Herr at that time. So we basically received money from the government of Luxembourg, international climate finance money, to develop a series of projects that are able to channel private funding on the ground. So the first phase was a little bit an ad hoc phase where we tried to identify different projects through the channels and the networks that we all had. We had a series of 8 different supported projects, from larger grants to smaller grants going to blue carbon projects specifically. Next to it, we also developed a knowledge hub with a number of knowledge papers. Capacity building and learning sharing was also a key element. As said, the key focus was really to lay out the main performance indicators, from carbon sequestration, avoided emissions, to climate adaptation, to increase of biodiversity, to MPAs created, the local communities involved. And this really responds also to the key targets that we have to achieve under the different frameworks like the UNFCCC, but also the biodiversity frameworks. Very early on, we created the knowledge products around positive impact management systems, which we felt is very important because that's what we want to emphasize in the projects we want to finance, really the positive impact and where we can drive value from the positive impact, be it through accessing new markets like the carbon markets, be it just to showcase how the projects with this impact contribute to the larger sustainable development goals and create value. So also try to reach out to the value-based investors. Here is a series of the knowledge papers again from Blue Bonds. A strong focus was from the beginning the infrastructure link, the green-grey infrastructure link, and also engagement with MDBs. These are all available on the web page of the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility. Here is an overview. I have to also go. Yes, these are the key impact areas, and these are basically the knowledge products that we have developed over the time. And here is the overview of the first and second phase projects that we have supported throughout the world. You can see a lot of it is in the, of course, global mangrove belt. A lot of it is in Asia, in Indonesia, Philippines, but also in Africa, Zanzibar, Kenya, and also Latin America, different countries from Belize to Colombia to Ecuador to Peru. So there's a whole pipeline of 17 projects that have been supported over the past years with a variety of structures, which I will explain a little bit further now. So we developed out of these projects we have been supporting, we saw that they are kind of recurring models. So we have been developing blueprints of these recurring models that we have seen. One of them is MPA, existing MPA under collaborative management with a non-profit third sector, where the focus is MPA enforcement and maintenance outsourced to the private sector. And revenue streams are visitor fees, blue carbon sales, revenues from small business activities, low-key ecotourism, and such. Here you can also see a second key business model that always was recurring as well is sustainable shrimp farming and mangrove restoration. These revolve around the zero input model, no chemicals, no additional feed, and reforestation of lost mangroves to a specific extent. In that case, it was 60% of the area. Different revenue streams again, from input cost savings, higher shrimp survival rates, etc., to commodities that have a certification and are able to get a higher price in the market. And typically also business case of mangrove conservation as a carbon asset, which involved a specific project purchasing a license from a logging company and trying to conserve and convert the area into successive protected patches until it covers a large extent of the area. And the revenue streams are from monetizing blue carbon. And there are also others which are all described and also in our knowledge products series, our blueprints, which are available on the website. And I would like to quickly go through two different projects. One is, I think we probably have to, one is a sustainable seaweed production in the Philippines, where you have basically a local enterprise, the project developer, who cultivates seaweeds, but also at the same time they collect fish nets and produce new primary recycled material from plastic. And also because it's close to an MPA, they are also involved in patrolling the MPA indirectly because of their seaweed farming, because of the lines and the towers that they use for drying. It prevents other fishing boats entering the marine protected area. And they are also actively involved in mangrove restoration. So you have a whole series of different revenue streams that will feed into this whole system of strengthening the coastal ecosystem. And this project was a winner of the World Economic Forum Uplink and friend of the Ocean Action Blue Food Challenge in 2021. And it received follow-up funding from the Conservation International CI Venture Impact Fund, which shows if you have a clear setup, an entity that can receive funding from the donor, that also can be an entity where you can channel additional impact funding into and have multiple revenue streams. You have a model that really can channel also additional investment from impact investors. A second project that I would like to very quickly focus on is Turnover Atoll, Sustainability Association, MPA management in Belize. TASA manages the Turnover Atoll in Belize, and the model is based on a sustainable tourism, MPA protection sustainable tourism model. And what we, in discussion with TASA, they had interest also to add a carbon credit component to it in order to tap into an additional, maybe you can, because I'm, oh, that's fine. Tap into an additional stream of funding. I'm always and develop really also a blue carbon project out of it. The project was quite successful of leveraging from the Sustainable Ocean Fund, the Mirova Atelia Sustainable Ocean Fund, a $750,000 loan to implement activities of sustainable tourism, coastal protection, and also mangrove restoration conservation. This loan was guaranteed by USAID, if I remember well, and it has been also receiving now potential follow-up support through being included as a candidate to be rewarded funding from the Belize Blue Bond. They had a Debt for Nature swap in Belize. So one of the KPIs under the Debt for Nature swap was to establish certified MPA. So they are looking for towards the IUCN for the green list certification, and that's part of the KPIs for the Blue Bond. And this specific project is one of the candidate projects to be able to consider to get follow-up funding potentials through the Blue Bond. Here again you see an example of four projects that have received follow-up funding. So although the pipeline development was an early action, we have seen successful candidates. These are all from the first phase. So from the 8 projects from the first phase. The second phase is still ongoing and running, so we cannot yet report on additional follow-up funding, but we hope to do so in 1 or 2 years. So the next slide, please. So here again you see an overview of the different impact reports that we established for each of the projects that have been financed, the different blueprint with the business models, and also not to forget an important podcast series with a number of good interventions from more high-level people, all leaders in the space, about how to channel more financing to coastal restoration and conservation. And this podcast has this. Hello? Hello? Okay. This podcast has also received an award, and it's and Dorothy Herr, who has been managing the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility for all these years, up to the beginning of this year, was really the leader behind the podcast and also a leader behind all the activities we have done over the past years through the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility. Yeah, so as said, we are now in the second phase where we had an additional donor joining, the UBS Optimus Foundation. And the second phase was really, and also the Australian government with a separate element, the Blue Carbon Accelerator Fund. Next slide, please. So the second phase was much more structured in a way, where we did do specific thematic calls. A call about coastal nature-based solutions, green-grey infrastructure, and also a call for marine protected areas and OECMs. All these calls received a lot of proposals, and we have selected now about 8 projects from the 2 different calls to be further supported with 2.25 million euro grant dispersed. The Accelerator Fund had more targeted calls looking for projects that have blue carbon credits as a core of the revenue sources. And here we received about 4 million Australian dollars and supported now around 8 projects. This is just a timeline to see, to show you where we are today in the different calls of the second phase. And the results are expected, really, the work is going on for many of the awarded projects, and the results are expected in around 1 or 2 years from the second phase. A key call was, of course, the green-grey infrastructure call, where we have also one of the awarded grantees here with us today, which I'm very pleased by. And because there's a lot of potential of combining infrastructure, grey infrastructure with green infrastructure, and doing infrastructure in a new way to integrate nature-based solutions. So we will hear about some of the projects later on. Here is one of the projects, the Blue Indigo Foundation in Colombia. It uses hybrid structures for coral reefs to protect coastal infrastructure. And to act really as a natural buffer, an enhanced natural buffer, I would say, to protect roads and main houses. And here's an water treatment, nature-based solutions water treatment projects that we have been selecting. It's located in Palau. And this is under a rich to reef concept. So looking at the pressures that you get for the ecosystems, also further up. And one of the key pressures is also waste management, or the lack of waste management. And here we have supported an NBS waste management project that immediately affects then the water quality around the coastal ecosystems. The next one. Here I don't take the suspense. I let Jan de Nul later talk about your magnificent projects in Ecuador. Yes, I think I've talked about that. And here again, we have seen this slide before about the key performance indicators that we try to really identify in each of the supported projects, but also on the MPA call, OECM call. One of the deliverables really of the grantees was to do a global ocean account together with the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership, which goes even more into depth into measuring and account for the diverse benefits of coastal blue carbon projects, to compile accounts and to produce credible information to support the uptake of the restoration methods. So really it feeds also into the national ocean accounts of the different countries where the projects are located. Here is again an overview of the second phase, also with the BCAF projects. All in all, we can say that we have supported 29 projects over the past 5 years and building a significant pipeline, which we are now starting to shape up in order to really feed them more systematically into the different financing mechanisms that have also developed over the past years, because we have made a lot of success, also progress in finding different ways to channel more broader finance into coastal ecosystems. Yeah. Well, yeah, another one. Here, the last slide is about high quality. You know, it's all about developing high quality blue carbon projects. And it has to be seen really in a way to also involve very much the local communities and be transparent, do stakeholder engagement, have a socio-economic analysis in order to get the project right. And that's what was also when we analyzed all the applicants, and there was a lot of work analyzing, going through all the applications. We really put a lot of focus on also stakeholder consultation, socioeconomic assessments, because if you restore and conserve and conserve, you always have an impact, a positive but also potential an opportunity cost and a negative impact. So there you need to be very diligent on how to set up the projects, and we have also a lot of good guidance now out there. The high quality blue carbon principles, for example, which is a good piece of work that you can tap into if you want to develop blue carbon projects. So this is all for the introduction side. Happy to give it over now.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for this excellent summary. And I hope you all note what an exceptional effort the BNCFF has been and what a journey has been, and how from the start the attempt was to combine specific project with the opportunity to deliver an entire output around knowledge, around process, around replicability, so that these approaches become scalable, accessible, and brought into the broader universe. So thank you very much, Natalie, and we'll come back to you with questions after we've heard from the other panelists. And I would very much like to now zero in on a specific live ongoing project that we have, and we are delighted to have with you from the company Jan de Nul Group that is operating this effort, Dr. Vicky Stratigaki, the Senior Engineer, Project Development and Conceptual Design. So Vicky, over to you. Could you give us some insights through the project development approach on how this project works, on how Jan de Nul approaches this, and what the goal, the design, the effort really is all about? Thank you very much, Vicky.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you hear me, yes. So I'm very happy to be here today. I'm representing Jan de Nul Group, which is a marine contractor. It's doing offshore projects, marine construction, civil engineering projects, and a lot of projects related to environmental issues. But also we develop a lot of nature-based solutions or nature-inclusive designs in our projects or for our projects. So this is an important aspect, or is becoming even more important in the future. And to get you into how we work with nature-based solutions or how we develop them, I will talk about our project in Ecuador. The project is named Aqua Forest, and it's funded by the BNCFF program for the feasibility study. But it's also funded by the government of Flanders for the next phase, which is the pilot, the demonstration project. This funding is already available, and it comes from the GST Climate Action Program of the government of Flanders. So this project, Aqua Forest, is about creating new mangrove habitats in Ecuador, which is what we do, Jan de Nul Group, together with our partners. In order to see why we do this, I think it's better to look first at the benefits of this project and go through the important ecosystem services. So it's a mangrove development project. It's about socioeconomic benefits for the local communities. It's about water purification that these mangroves perform for in the area. It's about carbon sequestration. It's about coastal protection. And it's about biodiversity gain. So these are more or less the benefits. But these are the benefits that are there for the local communities and for the environment. And this is the first reason why Jan de Nul, together with our partners, we decided to create mangroves and to start up aquaforest project. The second reason, and I think this is a key aspect of this project, the second reason is that mangrove seeds flourish very easily, they grow very easily on sediment. Often in a spontaneous way. And Jan de Nul group works with sediment. So this means that in our projects, we have dredging projects, we don't have to see sediment as waste and dispose it at other locations. We actually can see sediment as a resource and reuse it in a circular way to create new ecosystem, which is what is happening now in aquaforest. Another key aspect of this project, so it's the sediment aspect. The other key aspect is that the selection of the area, Ecuador, for Jan de Nul is very important because in 2019 we started a 25-year contract for the maintenance dredging of the access channel to the ports of Guayaquil, for Canal Marítimo and Canal Fluvial in the Guayas area. So this is important for us because we have a very long-term presence there in the future as well, which is important for the sustainability of the project, of the aquaforest project. So that was a second key aspect which made us think about starting aquaforest, and of course, together with the benefits that are there for the local communities, especially in an area where there's a lot of significant mangrove loss, and it's a flood-prone area. Together, combining all these aspects, we came to the idea of aquaforest, which is the core idea is to create new mangrove habitats reusing in a circular way dredged sediment. That's the key for us here. That's the business case. This is at the moment we have we are going through the feasibility study. We are completing it, and soon we will start to create this new mangrove habitat by creating a new. We will use the dredged sediment to create a new landmass, the substrate for on which the mangroves will start to grow. Another key aspect, and it will come then more to the engineering side, is that we are placing this new substrate there, this new land for the mangroves, and we will do we perform eco-engineering of that area to make it suitable for mangroves mangrove seeds to start developing in a natural way through natural propagation of the seeds. And there will be trees planted, but the idea is to create a system that can survive on its own through eco-engineering, which is something that we do as well. So I think these are the main technical aspects of the project. Another important aspect is that the project is based on co-creation and collaboration between many partners. Jan de Nul Group is coordinating the Aquaforest Consortium, but we have on board, we have other private companies which have interest in this type of projects. We have 3 research institutes, we have 3 universities. One of them is local University Espoo. We have an NGO, Calisur, which is also very much involved with local people in the creation of the habitat. So the co-creation aspect is also very important and necessary for this type of projects. And this is, beside this, we have, of course, the support of IUCN, an international organization. We have the support of the government of Flanders. We have the support of the local authorities and local organizations for the protection of mangroves. And this is very important then for making the project more attractive, or this concept more attractive for future investors, and also to make the project sustainable in the future, especially when the local authorities and local researchers are very much involved into the procedure from the beginning. So that was a short overview of Aquaforest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I think it gave us a great insight on what this is all about. It's live on the ground, it's engaged, uses the best of science and the best of conservation outcomes to actually deliver projects that have long-term sustainability. And BNCFF is delighted to partner with companies such as yours that have that long-term vision and bring the engineering and technical expertise to this space, because that is also a part of the knowledge transfer. It's that matching of knowledge and expertise and use of it in those spaces where you have that amazing natural capacity. So now that we've done a deep dive on one specific project, now we lift it all the way up to the legal, the broader regulatory world in which all of this sits. And I'm delighted to introduce Moritz von Unger, who's been a core part of this journey of BNCFF from the start. Moritz is the managing director of Silvestrum, and a globally recognized authority on all of these topics, has written in a broad range of spaces around this. So Moritz, if you could give us an impression of this wider context and environment, over to you.
Thank you, Torsten, and thank you, Joao, for having me. I'm really pleased and really lucky that I was able over the past 5 years to be there from the start to where we are now. And while we may not see, it's like in the frenzy of COP, the relevance of BNCFF and now BCAF, we certainly do see it when we are in the ground. And we as a firm, and myself at Silvestrum, we're trying to work a lot in the field in different countries on coastal habitats, blue carbon habitats. And over the past 5 years, the BNCFF and BCAF have become like mainstays, like really relevant, and for communities, for project developers, but also for all the people and all the institutions that are thinking along the way of, how can we make it possible that we finance something that's sustainable and blue in these ecosystems? And I'm almost proud, it's like that I could be part of that development. Now, what I wanted to do after these 5 years, and with you and within the podium, is to consider, to reflect a little bit about what was great, what was surprising, and where do we want to be in the next 5 years. So frankly, when we started the initiative, we had another idea, another concept, which was we perceived so many opportunities that are in all these coastal habitats and ecosystems. And we thought it's just, it's like there's a portfolio of projects and they are just struggling to make the last mile to get the private sector interested in doing this. Now, starting the work in BNCFF at the time, it was quite different. We felt and we learned pretty fast that there's a lot more groundwork to do and to operate, to really establish something that you could call a portfolio of projects. So we really had to get a step back and say, oh, where are we? How can we help? What are really the obstacles and barriers for communities, for project developers, for governments, including local governments, to say, oh, wonderful, there's technological solutions which are there, there's blue carbon asset generation opportunities, all this, how do we get there? How can we do this? And so we started thinking more about what's missing, what's difficult. Obviously, it's like different from terrestrial systems in a coastal environment. We have everything that's land tenure and governance is even more complicated on many levels than in terrestrial systems. So we also have, it's like if we think of pressures on landscapes and seascapes, we have terrestrial pressures, including agriculture. We have seawards pressures, it's like so we have to think about shipping, we have to think about fisheries, we have to think about pollution, and so on. And trying to navigate now, again, thinking about terrestrial systems and the 10 or 15 years of forestry work, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, REDD+, is something that has worked a lot and has provided a lot of initiatives in terrestrial systems. To some extent, they apply in coastal systems. To others, they don't. So it was quite challenging to see, to identify what are the pressures, what are the drivers, what are the underlying causes, and how could we go about it. Now, at the same time, we see, it's like while governments can do a lot, obviously, they can work on their governance system, they can work on land tenure issues, they can create or shift incentive frameworks, subsidies from being more painful on the ecosystems to something more useful, and so on. But often you see that governments don't need a lot more time, a lot longer time frames to put all this in place. At the same time, there are bits and pieces for the private sector that can work. And this is where we felt that the BNCFF and later BCAF can really make a difference. It's like and that's quite astonishing. So throughout, and I think, again, this is something of, I'm a little bit proud about this. I think we were the first ones to launch like a blue carbon call, it's like internationally. And with little money, 25,000 euros, 50,000 euros, 75,000 euros maybe, you saw that there's so much initiative suddenly that communities can pick it up and that they can say, oh, everything is so complicated in governance terms and regulatory terms, but yet there are certain opportunities that we can work on. Yes, we have to help. We have to help with business plans, we have to help with land tenure analysis, we have to help with legal regulatory screenings, and so on. But these are, it's like if you think about it, it's not that much that is needed. Again, it's not the last mile necessarily that all these projects are lined up and we just need a business plan and then it's going. No, it's more, and it's conceptually it's very interesting. It's more the first steps that are there. But then, it's like, as Natalie has explained, there are so many projects that have been funded that are now, it's like that have brought in finance, that have, it's like created blended finance situations that has been quite remarkable. Now, to sum it up, I think what was great was obviously the blue carbon calls, obviously the relevance that BNCFF and BCAF, for the little bit of money that there was, you saw these like 2.5 million euros that were leveraged through this funding. An enormous, it's like an enormous impact on so many projects in so many different communities. So that's great. I think it's a role for the future for BNCF and BCAF to say, okay, it's like we refine the process. We do it again. We run these calls. The blue infrastructure call, massively interesting. Your project, fantastic. You know, it's like, so there's so much more. We need some patience. Not everything is you know, it's like bankable tomorrow, but there's, you know, it's like I see our role as both, you know, it's like stimulating for communities conceptually. It's also all these papers that have been written in the background. It's massive. It's really nice. And then to you know, it's like help projects make the first steps to creating an environment for a project portfolio to start. That's really great. There's so much that still need to be done. If you think about benefit sharing, communities, how do we integrate them? How can we make small projects also in small island states possible? Not every project is something like the blue carbon project in Pakistan, which is like 300,000 hectares. How to make that happening? How can we institutionalize and provide guidance? All this is like something that I see over the next few years. But at the moment, I'm really quite content where we are at this stage. Thank you.
Moritz, thank you so much for that summary and your guidance in making this whole system grow. And so now that's a good opportunity for me to guide us over to Chip Cumliffe from ORA, the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, because ORA was actually, if you've spotted it, on one of our very first knowledge products. It was a partner. We sat down at the COP in Madrid to have this fantastic workshop around what blue infrastructure could really be about. And at that point, we had a real public-private partnership in the room. We had finance, we had industry, we had NGO expertise, and we were really trying to set the path for insetting of nature-based solutions into these more complex infrastructure type of projects, and how that can be done and scaled, etc. Now, ORA, in the meantime, has grown and developed and has a broad range of efforts around projects and around really that public-private partnership approach to move this forward. So, Chip, over to you, if you can give us some insights, what you've seen in that world and where ORA is taking this going forward.
Well, thank you, Torsten, and again, thank you to everybody that's invited us and me onto the panel. Look, I think the way that we are heading, and given what we've just heard, I think really provides us with an understanding that, you know, we're in this together. So we're not, you know, there's not just one party that is trying to develop projects and a project pipeline, which is, you know, as Natalie said at the very beginning, you know, one of the main barriers to developing to drive finance into the space. So ORA is a multi-stakeholder alliance made up of 80 plus members now, from the finance and insurance industry, from private sector, public sector, NGOs, etc. And we have a mission to drive $500 million into coastal and ocean natural capital by 2030, making 250 million people more resilient to the impacts of climate and ocean risks. So I think one of the things that we are very aware of is the need to drive finance into the adaptation space. We know there's a $200 to $400 billion gap in that finance. And one of the barriers to driving it into the space is around the lack of project pipeline. And so what we are doing with ORA, or at ORA, is looking to develop that through grant funding. So, grant and philanthropic funding, and indeed blended finance as well. We've spent the last 3 years developing 60 projects. So we're involved now with 60 projects. 40 of them have a finance and insurance link, and indeed when we put out a call for proposals, the projects themselves have to have that linked to either finance and or insurance. And I think what we're starting to see now is momentum in building, or that there's a building momentum in the project pipeline itself. I think an example is that, so we did a call for proposal for the Government of Canada in 2022. I think we had 81 projects that were eligible, worth about $22 million. In fact, this year we did a similar call for the UK government and the Blue Planet Fund, and we received 131 proposals that were eligible, and that was worth about $45 million. So we're starting to see, given the space, and it's not just Aura, it's BNCFF and others, Global Fund for Coral Reefs, all looking at really sort of driving this momentum forward. And I think that one of the things that's really positive for us is about the engagement of our members. So how we utilize their expertise either to develop projects and or to utilize them to help understand the problems and get over some of the barriers. And so on every sort of month or every sort of 6 weeks or so or 8 weeks, we have a solution lab. And so we pose a question or a barrier, and we bring in these different, our different members to really start to try to answer some of those questions, which is really, evidently is a really positive and it's not just beneficial for us, but also beneficial for all of those communities that are on the ground who are potentially having the same problems as well. So, I think there's a really it's great to see there's this really net positive impact that we are all having in this space for climate, of course, for people, and for biodiversity. And some of the work that we're doing, maybe an example, and interesting actually, Natalie, sort of some of the work that BNCFF is doing, we've either already funded or are looking to fund, some of the things that you've already talked about. So it's really positive that we're able to not just identify these projects at an early stage, but also start to replicate and scale them into different geographies as well. And of course, that is a key and critical piece of the puzzle. So we're working on financially or developing reef insurance policies for building reef resilience in the Mar region. We're doing some microinsurance and some work on weather, so it's parametric insurance for small-scale fishes in Philippines linked to sea state. So those fisher folk who aren't able to go out, or at least encouraged not to go out during really bad weather, who obviously put their own lives or the lives and livelihoods of their own family at risk by doing so. So that reduces by them putting in a very small amount of money and paying a little premium on a monthly basis. And of course, what it does do is it ensures that after that extreme event, they're not going out but overfishing. And of course, that is another major problem is the use of dynamite fishing in that part of the world. We're working on apps against small-scale fishers to help them to measure and to reduce the impact on some of those more more impacted fisheries. And I think over the next 2 years we'll be investing another $10 million into this space. So we invest between $150,000 to $500,000 per project. So we've got another $10 million in the next by 2025 that we'll have invested into those projects. But I think that there's a real need to create these market-driven mechanisms to allow bigger and greater finance. So it's all great, it's all fantastic having the grant finance heading into the space, but how do we drive the hundreds, if not the hundreds of millions of dollars to allow the banks and the private sector to really get involved? And so through the Sea Change Impact Financing Facilities, something that we're running is developing a couple of things. One is an impact fund for what we call the missing middle. So for those businesses or organizations that are probably slightly too big for government funding but too small for the banks to get involved in. And so we're creating an impact fund called the Outrigger Impact Fund. We are developing, we've just undertaken a feasibility study for a guarantee fund or a guarantee facility, so we can utilize that to help drive in private finance into this space as well. We're developing what's called an octopus desk, which is a way in which we can marry investors and projects. And there's a blue bond incubator work we're doing as well. So there's lots of things going on in this space. But I think it's really important that we look at not only a bottom-up approach, which is the work I lead, but also a top-down approach as well. So look, let me leave it there. I mean, it's an exciting space, and I think that the fact that we're all working in this area together, and I think João and I have a fairly regular conversation, and I think that the great thing is that we all have the same goal, and I think we can learn a lot from each other.
It is indeed encouraging that we are now starting to develop this whole nature-based ecosystem of solutions, and the creativity, the ideas that come in here are now percolating throughout a much broader range of actors and partners, and so this is great. And I think this is a good time to hand over to João Sousa, who at IUCN has been a great host of this facility, a great partner and supporter. There's an entire team at IUCN behind these efforts. João is heading this team, and so João, you've seen now, heard how we perceive all these opportunities and outcomes, and you are now thinking ahead. How can we take this forward? Where do you see BNCFF sitting in this universe? Over to you to give us some ideas.
Thank you very much. I will basically respond in 5 points. Being the first one, that it would be interesting that IUCN would become the go-to organization for funding. Since we are doing funding to finance, the idea that the big players for finance are there, we're not taking any place, would be interesting because we have an extensive network around the world with offices all around, and we have very, very good representation and connections with governments. That would be the funding agency to go to when it comes to this type of projects. Second point, would be very interesting that we start to create some synergies with the private sector, understanding when you talk with private sector that they have interest to their sustainability programs to do something. They don't know how to, where to go, and the idea is that you synergize with them, trying to understand what would be their potential projects to support, and we would be kind of incubator in this case for the private sector. The third point, develop the specific goals in 3 areas. The first one that is dear to me, which is small island developing states, for a several number of reasons I'm not going to develop too much here. The second one, to have a specific goals on indigenous and local populations. Accessing financing for this group, it's very difficult, as you know. And also trying to work towards a call for proposal in the Med region, because we were lucky enough to have support from Monaco to run a feasibility studies on repairing countries in the Med, understanding the necessity per country, and this would be very interesting in terms of launching a call in the region. And for the final point, in terms of BNCFF evolution, it's trying to understand a bit more in terms of de-risking investment in blue carbon. The idea is that trying to understand when you actually promote and you advance to investment in blue carbon, it's an investment. So how do you manage the risk? So unless you have an holistic approach towards MPA, MSPs, trying to understand the whole context, then yes, you can come and say it's an investment and it's protected because it's an investment. So these are the 5 areas that I would like to see BNCFF moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, João. And I think indeed it's exciting to see these different avenues that this work can be taken forward into, and to apply it in these contexts, which is so key to actually deliver that holistic outcome that you were talking about. I think this is a good time to go back to all of our panelists. You now have heard from these different perspectives, starting out with that whole universe that BNCFF has created that Natalie described to us, then having had the deep dive into one live concrete project, which Vicky gave us a great insight into, and Moritz explained the regulatory context, and then Chip showed the linkages between the BNCFF type thinking, the work that Aura does, and these broader sets of opportunities. And now we were lucky to hear from Zhao where this could all take us if we manage to work together, engage additional supporters, and take it forward. So having had that broad overview, I think maybe I'll just go through the panelists in the same order again and go to you first, Natalie, to sort of, having heard all of that, what would be your thoughts, your feedback?
Yes, thank you, Torsten. Different things on my mind. First of all, I think what's really important is to get the impacts right. I mean, what we're doing is all about having an impact on the ground, and we have now new mechanisms out there to quantify the climate mitigation impact. We have new approaches to quantify the climate adaptation impact. We have whole taxonomies out there that lay out for the financial sector specific type of activities that generate climate change mitigation, adaptation impacts. We have advanced so much in terms of how can we identify activities also for the financial sector that bring about the SDGs that we want. And I think really the focus should be to crystallize the impacts that we know are there in a way and show them in a way so that investors know how to put them into their thinking minds when they invest in projects. And here also an important element, I think, is the long-termism. I like what you said, Vicky, about you are there on the project, on the sites for 20 years. These projects need a lot of time to grow and to develop successfully. We wish we would have also the investors who have this long-term vision. So we were working on getting access to these investors with a long-term vision, and it also runs into a debate of course, we try to also access new type of investors that are interested in investing in carbon removal. I mean, the mangroves are one of the unique natural carbon removers of the world that can store carbon for hundreds of centuries, which you very rarely find in the natural carbon removal space. So there's a lot of discussion also at the COP next days probably about removal. So let's also access this new type of investors that are focused on removal. Let's access this type of investors that are focused on more longer-term, value-based investing. So, just these 2 points, and I'm happy to give it over.
Thank you very much, Natalie. So I'll pass it over to you, Vicky. You are concrete and on the ground. You heard these broader contexts. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think that, this type of mechanisms like BNCFF are very important for the projects, for the bankability of the projects. What we need is, through this type of projects and then other funding mechanisms, to have more demonstration of nature-based solutions, because this is what, in the end, will reduce the risk and make these projects more attractive to investors. So, for example, when it comes to Aquaforest, the project of Jan de Nul for us it's very important, and we see it happening in front of our eyes, that we can demonstrate the reduction of costs, because we simply combine activities in this project. That was the idea. We have dredging, an ongoing dredging activity, which is necessary. It's necessary for the maintenance of the access channel and also for the ecological balance in the area. And then we have a byproduct that we can use to create new ecosystems. And this is cost sharing. And we are able, through this mechanism, because we share the risk together when we demonstrate, realize these projects, we are able to demonstrate that it's possible, that it can happen and it can have good results. And that is very important for us as as a company that realizes nature-based solutions.
Thank you very much. And indeed, it's a particular pleasure for me because as we had the initial investment thesis, this is exactly what we were talking about, that nature-based solutions not only deliver benefits to nature and people, but they are actually a more cost-effective way of delivering outcomes. That there may be new revenue sources inside these structures, but that their holistic approach makes it financially more sound. And I think if we can get that message across, we will create that shift that is globally needed from the millions to the billions to the trillions of a more environmentally and economically viable approach to how we deal with coasts and seascapes. Moritz, over to you. Sorry.
One more thing, which is important, I think, for nature-based solutions. Every investor has different criteria of what is bankable. But what is important is to be able to demonstrate that you can perform the project, which is possible through a strong project consortium in collaboration with international organizations like IUCN. And it's important to, it's very important, Aquaforest will become a living lab. And in this living lab, in this new mangrove habitat, it is scope of the project, of the wider project, to quantify these benefits, and which again will make this type of projects more attractive to investors. It's only by quantifying the value of these ecosystem services and the benefits that come along, because it's not, if you don't have a revenue stream, direct revenue stream, it's difficult to demonstrate the value of the project. But if you have quantified it through a living lab, through a demonstration project, you can show to investors and you can create more confidence about the positive outcomes of the project.
Very true. Thanks so much. Moritz, over to you.
Thank you, Torsten. A great discussion. If there's one thing that I can say is it's like we see all the challenges, we see all, it's like how difficult it is, and how rewarding if you find something that if you engage in a project that's really creating impact. What I would hope for is that we don't get impatient and that there's no despair. I've seen this, unfortunately, too often that, it's like even if you think about climate mechanisms and climate change, there was the clean development mechanism that took 10 years in Africa to really take root and to create interest and knowledge so that key people could use it. And the international community has moved on. And they said, oh, the CDM didn't really materialize, didn't bring much. It's like, and so everything was there, and then it's the next thing. In forestry, as I mentioned before in Red Plus, we've seen a little bit the same thing. There was like a lot of enthusiasm, and then people see, oh, it's really difficult, and it takes time, and everyone is in despair, and then people move on. Creating a portfolio of blue NBS, creating blue natural capital into work streams that you create revenue streams takes time, and we need to be there to help. Take the example of insurance that you mentioned. Aura is a great player there. There's others like UNCDF has done terrific work in Fiji and other island states. Now, it's like to me, to some extent, it seemed like 10 years ago, oh, the insurance companies say, oh, this is really interesting. We should look into it. And then there's a feasibility study, and then yeah, maybe we test it, and then, it's like, it's more, it's like it's great for, the window and stuff, but then they it seems the corporate world has moved on because there's not that much. But actually, if you do the work, and if you stay put, and if you work and see that it's like after, it may take 5 years longer, but then you get there. It's like you have like really redeeming projects and works, MPA financing, another thing where you see, oh, how can you bring in the private sector? It's not something like that you can do from one day to another to make it work. But there's so many interesting examples where you do, and where IUCN has also been involved, where it works, that you can slowly create something that is scalable. That's something that I would like to keep in mind, and to keep all of these institutions that are there focused on. Thank you.
Thank you, Moritz. And I think you're absolutely right, that perseverance, that building the basics, which then, that's why I was pleased to have this ocean accounting component being brought in, because once it's in the numbers, you have something that stays and that one can work with. Chip, over to you.
Yeah, I want to just pick up on what Vicky said about revenue and the need maybe for investors to see a revenue stream. And I think you can switch it around as well the other way and think, okay, well, if you're utilizing nature-based solutions as a resilience tool, or at least to be able to avoid costs. So, if you're whether it's an airport, infrastructure, whatever it might be, but if you can manage or you can measure the avoided costs from extreme weather or whatever it might be, then actually, then you're able to put that into your bottom line or into your P&L. Then you obviously are able to sort of see that as a, not necessarily a revenue stream, but a way in which you can utilize that and then crowd in further funding to help manage manage that ecosystem. I mean, I think a couple of things as well, Torsten. One is around don't be, not necessarily pushing the boundaries, because I think you also need to do all the due diligence around identifying the projects. But I think we shouldn't be afraid to fail. I think the number of projects that we have going on, you're likely to have one or two, but in fact, in reality, by identifying more, then you're de-risking that investment in the space itself anyway. Come back to Natalie's point around impact and measuring impact, and I think by measuring it, of course, you're then likely to able to drive more investment into the space as well, because those investors can see what their money is going into. But I think maybe I'll come back to my final point, which I said before, was about that common goals, those common learnings, indeed almost creating this community of practice amongst those groups and those organizations and the likes of us here, to either develop solutions or at least have answers to questions that we've yet to find. So I think it's really utilizing the skill sets and the expertise of those in the room and those outside the room too, which would be critical.
Thank you very much. And I think it's exactly that ability to bring that knowledge to that wider community that's so crucial. And given that we are in the EIB Benelux Pavilion, I just sort of wanted to put a shout out to the work that actually the multilaterals are now doing increasingly to get on board with this regenerative blue economy agenda, with investment into nature-based solutions, with scaling up ocean positive action. And that's really when we will get traction, when our community of expertise is linked with a broader financial community, so that at all of these angles, the knowledge, the training permeates. One of the things we did early on within BNCFF was actual training within, in this case, the Asian Development Bank, within one of multilateral institutions, how you could use that knowledge and expertise. And it's that linkage that's really powerful. Joao, does that help you with your thinking forward?
Yeah, it helps. Just because I should be in the first, because they all took words from my head, so I have nothing to say. No, honestly. Because I referred holistic before, I would like to touch 4 points again, attached to moving forward BNCFF or financing facilities in this case. The first would be research and ocean accounting. It's impressive even in other areas how many people you talk to, they have no clue they're talking. And I've had the experience working in policy related to plastics, and you cannot even have the person talking to you to understand or tell you what is the definition of a plastic is. Ocean space is basically the same. So first point, research and ocean accounting. We need to know what we're losing or what we're gaining. Second point, cost of inaction versus the benefits from investment. How do you explain this? This is where the point lies in terms of making the case for investment. The third point, risk management. Of course, I talked this before and it was mentioned to create investor trust. And the last point, transparency regarding not over-delivering, which is always a problem, which is you over-deliver and people create these expectations. So above all, transparency in the entire process when it comes to, for instance, blue carbon credits and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. These are really important points of how we can take this forward. So I thought this is maybe a good moment to see whether there are any particular questions from the audience that we could pose to our panelists. Is there anybody who has a particular question to raise at this stage? If that is not the case, then maybe this is a great opportunity to ask Minna Epps, IUCN's head of the ocean team, to come join us here and give you an opportunity to address us. You can maybe stand right where I'm standing and give us the chance to hear about what I think maybe some exciting announcement. Thank you, everybody. I think this was a really deep discussion. I hope a lot of people online, all of this went live to the world. So I hope that the audience online and the future audiences who will listen in to these panels and to our podcasts and other things will see what a vibrant world this is, how these opportunities are evolving, and how we have this excellent coalition of expertise that will bring this whole blue natural capital world forward. Because when we started, we didn't on purpose start just with blue carbon. We started with blue natural capital as this holistic concept so that we were able to address issues around biodiversity, around climate, around livelihoods in an integrated way. And so this is the pathway forward. So over to you, Minna Epps.
All right, so just before lunch. So good afternoon, I guess. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a good COP so far. It's very busy. I was delighted to see that this was on the agenda, and every single session that we go to, it's all about accelerating and scaling up. So this is excellent to listen to your expertise as well in terms of joining us. And would really like to thank also a lot of other colleagues here behind it, working on this. But we know that marine protection is climate action, and that's really why we're here. And I really like your comment there, Chip, that we shouldn't be afraid to fail, and we need lots of trial and errors. And several of you that has been involved from the beginning know what hard work has gone into this to actually get it right. And it takes time. But we have some really valuable lessons learned. So we've had several different calls. And I would like to take this opportunity to really thank the government of Luxembourg, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Sustainable Development for their generous contribution, but also the Optimus Foundation. So with their generous support, we were able to actually announce a call for proposal for different projects that we will be able to give a grant that could then demonstrate this. So there was also like to thank, the Grants Approval Committee for really going through this, and we received a lot of applications for the recent call, which was on marine protected areas, but also on other effective conservation measures. So without any further delay, I'd like to take this opportunity to actually announce the 6 winners of the project that will be receiving a grant from the Blue Natural Capital Funding Facility. So first, there is a project that was from Conservation International in Brazil. It's looking to integrate MPAs and the surrounding community and really engaging in the tourism industry. So that's winner number 1 in no particular order. There is also from Blue Finance operating in Indonesia. And this is also a project that would look at effective management of MPAs and the financial sustainability of a network of MPAs, because we know we can't just work with single MPAs. We need to really look at a network of MPAs to have that seascape approach. And this is really in central Sulawesi, 600,000 hectares of high biodiversity coral reefs, and also enhancing the different livelihoods and food security of thousands of households. So really pleased. We also have a third winner, which is also in Indonesia. It's the Reef World Foundation, and it's also looking at, it's together with the UNEP and COPSI, and basically looking at investigating what new revenue generating stream could there be to really make sure that they have long-term financial sustainability, and really looking how can you actually integrate tourism and MPAs and using the greenfin approach. So that's really exciting. And also Sierra Leone, we have a project that's one of the selected projects in Africa, and it motivates youth in Sierra Leone for community-based conservation. So that's an excellent example of really looking at how we can advance conservation and having that youth engagement, protect our marine environment for future generation. And we also have a fifth winner, which is in Peru. I'll see if I can get this right. Consorcio Manglares del Noreste del Peru. So I think that's northeastern Peru. And this project is really to transform this area and really trying to pioneer investor-supported MPAs, both with blue carbon and sustainable shrimp and aquaculture and ecotourism as a catalyst for this project to foster long-term multiple revenue streams. And finally, we have one project which is from India. It's taking place in India, and it's by the Zoological Society of London. And it's really to protect and support India's national action plan for the dugong conservation, basically restoring the habitat, which is so vital and disappearing quite quickly. And this is also an area that I visit myself and I hold very dearly. So we really, with that, we have now declared those 6 winners that successfully, we're looking to follow these 6 projects very, very closely so we can see how we can help to kind of scale these efforts up. And we hope that in the near future we will be able to announce more calls like this and to say that we can, as part of our efforts to scaling up, accelerating. So I think we should actually give a round of applause for those successful grantees. And I'm also very delighted to announce that you already mentioned the global partnership, but also to mention the IUCN Green List, because the Green List is really there as a global standard to be rewarding and incentivizing. It has an independent way to actually measure the effectiveness of the MPA, which is so important. And last but not least, is also connected with the financing mechanism that is also going to be launched very soon for the green space. So we're hoping there'll be one for the blue bonds in the future. But this is really a way that we can go back to, how do we actually include a financial contribution to achieve our international targets? And the Green List is officially also accepted in the CBD context of the great global biodiversity framework. So that's something that's very measurable, and I think that's really key. We need to be able to measure our positive conservation outcomes. So with that, again, thanks to all the panelists for being part of the process, but also to be part of sharing your experience with us here today and with people online. So with that, and thank you very much, Torsten, for giving me the opportunity to announce the winners. So thank you very much. I'll give the floor back to you, Torsten. Thank you.
Yes, so we're closing the session now, but we will ask all the panelists to just stand up for a photo once your microphones have been removed. Thank you so much.